William T. Sherman was born in 1820 and lived with Thomas C. Wigg, an Ohio politician, after his father's death when Sherman was only 9 years old. In 1840, Sherman graduated from the United States Military Academy at West Point. He fought in Florida in the Second Seminole War, 1835 to 1842. Sherman had never commanded in a major Union victory, and his military career had repeated ups and downs, but he was known as the second-best Northern commander. During the last two campaigns, Sherman had earned a reputation for destruction and lack of discipline his soldiers had. Southerners especially resented him after his men burned Columbia, South Carolina, even though rumors spread that it was set on fire by cotton by retreating Confederates. Sherman was also the only man to twice receive the thanks of Congress during the Civil War. First, the Chattanooga, and second, for Sherman's march to sea. He was noted for his refusal to be drawn into politics. Sherman was a leading general for the Union in the American Civil War. He became famous for his march to sea across Georgia in 1864 and for his march through the Carolinas in 1865.
Union General Sherman had made progress, but Hood's army was still alive and fighting. Hood hoped to force Sherman to abandon Atlanta by moving his 40,000-man army into Tennessee. Instead, Sherman decided to leave General George Thomas and 60,000 men in Tennessee to fight Hood's army, while he took the other 60,000 men to march from Atlanta to the Atlantic Ocean and ignore supply lines to just simply live off the land. He claimed that marching an army through Confederate territory showed their power. This, however, backfired because he forced all citizens to leave Atlanta and they were not happy. Sherman claimed it would be safer elsewhere, but they still weren't happy. Hood decided to attack each half of Sherman's army separately, and on November 30th he attacked 27,000 Northerners at Franklin, Tennessee. Although they managed to break through, the Union held them and Hood lost more than double the Union casualties. 6 Confederate generals killed, 5 wounded, and 1 captured. Union troops fell back to Nashville to join the rest of Thomas's army, but Hood followed. December 15th, Thomas attacked Hood. They pushed Confederates out of their defenses on the first day and overwhelmed them on the second. Hood lost 6,000 soldiers, 4,500 were captured, and later when Hood's army gathered, only 20,000 soldiers could be assembled, and after, Hood resigned his command.
General Sherman planned to march through Georgia, destroying everything of value in his path. Sherman began his campaign on May 5, 1864. He didn't believe his troops could win if they assaulted Johnston's troops, so he led 2/3 of his troops to pretend like they were going to attack, while the other third marched south through Snake Creek Gap, heading toward Resaca. Sherman decided that it was necessary to destroy the Confederate ability and will to fight by destroying the property that the Southern armies claimed they fought for. On November 15th, Sherman burned Atlanta to the ground, then led his army on a march to Savannah, Georgia. His men burned anything they could not use and freed slaves along a 40-mile radius strip of Georgia between Savannah and Atlanta. Savannah, a key southern port, fell on December 21st. The war was entering its final months. There was nothing the Confederacy could do to prevent defeat.
Union troops attacked the Confederate forces of General William Hardee at Jonesboro on August 31st, 1864. Hardee's defeat ended all hope for stopping Sherman from capturing Atlanta. Eventually taking possession of Atlanta, Sherman ordered the population evacuated and the military value of the city destroyed. Sherman sent George H. Thomas back to the Middle Tennessee to deal with Hood. He remarked his march to sea. Taking Savannah, he announced the city of a Christmas gift to the president of the country. Marching north to aid Grant in the final drive against Richmond, he drove through the Carolinas and accepted Johnston's surrender at Durham Station. Grant had come to understand that the formal assault had become more costly in men. Attacks across open field, the way to win the war, Grant realized, was destroy the South's ability by cutting off its food, clothing, weapons, and shoes. Sherman deliberately laid waste to the land through which he marched in order to deprive the South of the food and supplies it needed to bring Southerners to their needs. The strategy was successful. After Sherman marched through, there were hardly any buildings remaining in the area that was standing. The South knew they were going to lose because all the supplies, food, land, and transportation was destroyed. Sherman caused all this to occur. Total warfare was destroying not only the Confederate government and military,
but also civilian support systems. Nothing was found alive in the track him and his army took. Sherman didn't believe his troops could win. If they captured Resaca, they would find the railroad line that would bring key supplies to Johnston and forced to surrender. Broken railroads were used and tied up against trees and known as Sherman's neckties. They damaged Johnston's army and waged war on those who supported rebellion. Atlanta was burned to the ground and was completely rebuilt from its ashes, earning the name the City of the Phoenix. The march sped up the speed of the Confederate. At the end of Sherman's march to the sea, his army of 60,000 men had covered 285 miles within 5 weeks. They had cut a swath between 20 and 60 miles through Georgia. Sherman got the permission to continue with the psychological war into South Carolina in 1865. His march through Georgia to South Carolina made him an idol in the North and an arch villain in the South.